Welcome to a component overview and organization video for Trickerion Legends of Illusion, the Collector's Edition. When I received my box, I was completely overwhelmed by the number of components contained in this game, but hopefully this video will help you organize, tell you what's what, and get you set up and ready to play. The first is your tray for your market materials, level 1 materials, level 2 materials, level 3 materials, which are differentiated by color and by the number of dots on the bottom. There's 4 of each level, and there are 12 copies of the level 1s, 8 copies of the level 2s, and 6 of the level 3s. So those go into this tray with its lid, and that can just be pulled out and set to the side of the game board. The next tray is this one here for the Dalgard's Academy expansion. It holds the Protege powers, these envelopes, which you can shuffle and put into these 2 stacks here. And once you've shuffled them and put them away, you don't need to shuffle them again when you get them out. Those are very nicely into there. And then the 2 columns of 3 levels hold your practice rooms on one side and your classrooms on the other side. So your level 36 classrooms go on one side, practice rooms on the other side, and so on. And those are easy to just leave in here by the side of your game board and let you have those when the need arises. And note that these do not need to be randomized, as any player who wants to build a practice room or classroom in the expansion is able to look through and choose the one that they want. But I find it useful to leave them with the level side up just because it's easier at a glance to see which pile you're picking up, and they're very easy to pick up by just tilting them to the side like this. The last thing that goes into this tray are these blocker tiles that are going to block certain classroom and practice room spaces until a certain point in the game, and they fit very nicely on top of the level 1 practice rooms. They'll go out on the board during setup, and then this can just be by the side of your game board. So for each of the player trays, you're going to want all of the players' components and their assignment cards. For the base game, each player will get a hand of 9 cards, 3 theater cards, 2 downtown, 2 market row, and 2 workshop. If you're playing with Dark Alley, you're going to take away 1 of each of those and add the Dark Alley card to give yourself a starting hand of 6 cards. And if you're playing with the Dalgard's Academy, we'll just add that for a hand of 7 cards. Check the setup rules to see exactly what players need. But for the purposes of setting your game into the trays, leave all of these assignment cards that a player may need in each tray. I tend to play with both the Academy and the Dark Alley, so I'm just going to turn them like this with the extra ones at the bottom, and they go into that card tray. Next we have our workers. We have our Magician, who goes up here into the corner, and then we have our Specialist tokens for the Engineer, the Manager, and the Assistant, rather, and we have 4 Apprentices. If you are playing with Dalgard's Academy, these components over here in the corner are only related to Dalgard's Academy. These 2 tokens here are the ones that you will need for the Protege. And before we put those in, we'll take these 4 smaller trick token squares, and they fit nicely into this little space here, on the top of which your Protege tokens fit. And then finally, for Dalgard's Academy, you will need these 12 banner tokens, and they fit into this well here, along with your scoring marker for the score track, and then your turn order marker or an advertising marker is going to go into this spot right in there. And finally, the last thing you'll need to do is put in your trick markers in the spots in the center. There are 5 markers for tricks, although I believe in the base game you only ever use 4 of them. So check again your setup rules to see exactly how many components people will need. And then finally, these markers will fit sideways along the top of your trick markers, like so. And finally, the lid will fit on. Note that the lids on these player trays are not completely square in spite of how they look. So if you try to put it on this way, it's not going to work very well. But if you line the T up with the center row of tricks, it fits very well and snaps on. And then you'll set up a tray like that for each of the 4 player colors: green, blue, red, yellow. First thing to note, there are 3 sizes of cards, so some of the slots in the trays are only available for certain kinds of cards. The theater cards are all large like this. Then they're the sort of standard playing card size like these magician cards, and the small cards that are similar to these advertisement cards. So first thing, the magicians, note that you have a variety of choices of magicians. They have either this little plume in the upper right hand corner, which is the normal symbol for the solo scenario. So I believe this is the side you'd use for solo. And then this is the side to use with Dalgard's Academy. If you are playing the standard game, check the rules to determine. I believe you use this side for anything that is not Dalgard's Academy. And then these would just go to the player corresponding to the magician that they are playing. Secondarily, we have tricks. These cards here are the signature tricks that are played if you are playing with the Contraptions expansion. That is what this little light bulb symbol in the upper corner means. And then these are the standard tricks. There is a deck of them, one for each of the schools of magic. The school of magic is shown here in the top circle. And there are level 1 tricks, level 16 tricks, and level 36 tricks for each. And these correspond to what is in the Magician's Notebook. On the small card front, we have Magician's Powers. And these again come in level 1, level 16, and level 36. And there are 3 decks, one for each level of these small cards if you are playing with the Magician's Powers expansion. The special assignment cards are also small. Note that there are some that are only used if you're playing with Dalgard's Academy. They have the little blue corner. And there's one in each deck that you only play with if you're playing with the Contraptions expansion that has the little light bulb. Another deck of the larger cards are these Duel of Magicians cards, which show you which spaces to block on a given round. That's the 2-player only game. And then these are the Heirs cards, the Heirs plan cards if you're playing the solo game. And again, some of those are only if you're playing Dalgard's Academy, should you use the ones that have the little blue scroll. On the theater cards, you're going to have 3 different theaters: Riverside Theater, Grand Megorian, and Magnus Pantheon. The Magnus Pantheon was evidently added with Dark Alley, so they all have the Dark Alley symbol, but I always use them. And those are going to be in a large card spot. You're also going to have a set of these theaters, same 3 theaters, that are for the solo game that have this purple plume on them, and a set of theaters that are for the Duel of Magicians variant that have the crossed magic wands on them. So you're going to want to probably keep those separate from the other theaters. I do. But if you're constantly switching back and forth, maybe it's easier for you to sort them by theater. That is up to you. So a word about the card storage and your options. So there's a variety of places where small cards fit. There's a small card at the bottom of each of these 4 spots in the main tray. You can also put small cards here, and there's a spot for 2 decks of small cards that fit across the top of this space, one on each side of this divider. And then in the bottom of the box, there's also 2 more small card slots. Unfortunately, there are 10 different types of small cards. You have these Magician advertisement cards, you have 3 types of Magician powers, you have 5 types of special assignment cards, you have the Air solo deck. That gives you 10 different kinds of cards, and there's really only 9 slots for small cards. And the sets that they come in don't really correspond with the way that the trays are laid out, so you just have to make some decisions about where stuff is going to store. The fairly obvious thing to me to use for these smaller card slots at the top are the main game special assignment cards if you're just playing with the main Dark Alley expansion, leaving the Dalgard's Academy cards for a different location. And then I would choose to use the 3 slots here for what you play with most frequently. If you are usually utilizing the Magician's Powers cards, having the 3 decks of Magician's Powers here makes perfect sense. But it is not, for myself, a variant that I play with most frequently, so I usually use the 2 small slots in the bottom of the box for 2 of the Magician's Powers decks, and then put 1 of them in the bottom here, and reserve the top for the Dalgard's Academy Special Assignment cards and the Magician Advertisement cards. And then I also place the Solo, the 10th small card deck, down in the bottom of the box. For the larger sized cards, it makes perfect sense to use the slots on top of the Special Assignment cards here for the 4 different types of tricks in the game. And then I use the small well over here that fits those same size cards for the specialty trick cards from the Contraptions expansion, and then the Magician's cards themselves. And then across the top, where we have the space for the largest cards, I put my theaters that are not the Duel of Magicians and Air theaters. These I will save and put at the bottom of the box. The other things that go into this odds and ends tray is we have this spot here where prophecies go. Along the side there are spots for these things, which I hope you didn't throw away when punching out your punch boards. These actually are part of the game. They're just these plain purple tokens that are used as blockers for certain spaces in Duel of Magicians, and you can also use them in the solo variant. This spot here holds these 2 tokens that are used in the solo variant, and then these spots here hold your 2 blocker reminders for the turn order track from Dalgard's Academy, and then these special tokens which are used by Professor Bernard when playing with him in Dalgard's Academy. And then up at the top of the tray is a spot for your 6 downtown dice, the 5 dice you will need when playing solo, and your Trickerion shard turn order marker. Next I want to talk about the bags. I have the metal coins, so I have put those in the large bag. I sometimes, when I'm playing, will take the coins out to create banks and use this as a draw bag for the prophecy tokens so that I can just draw the next one out and don't have to make piles of those. I have the contraptions in this small burgundy bag, and we'll just bring those out and give them to players if we're playing with that expansion. And then finally the Trickerion shards I have in the small white one. Note that these bags do not stay closed. They are a little bit fraught with danger, especially with the Trickerion shards, so just handle with care. I do hope to someday fix these, make them a little bit more closable and more useful for actual gameplay, but for now I am using them to store those 3 items. Okay, so we are ready to load up the box. As previously mentioned, we're going to start by putting the rest of our cards down here in the bottom. I have my 2 other Magician's Powers decks that go there, and then I put all of the solo variant things on one side, so the Heirs planning cards and the solo theaters, and then on the other side I will put the Duel of Magicians cards and the Duel of Magicians theaters. Then on the other side, we're going to load the contraption boards, which look like this. They're tall and skinny, and they fit nicely into this little well here. Those are for the contraptions expansion. And then we're going to fit our assistants and our managers and our engineers and our proteges, those boards, all fit, that whole big pile of them fit up against the box wall and underneath these 2 tabs here on this side. There we go. And there's a whole big pile of those that fit in there. And then on top of the contraption boards there, you're going to put your player boards. Remember again that these are not square, so if you turn the T on the embossed T on the top sideways, they don't really fit down snugly, but if you turn them into the box. They fit very nicely, 2 on each side piled on top of each other. And that makes a nice flat base for the rest of the components. On top of that, you're going to put your Doll Guards Academy classrooms, practice rooms, etc., and your marketplace thing. And then on the other side, in the little well that remains, is where all of your bags will go. So your money, your contraptions, and your Trickerion shards. And again, be careful how you load these, because you don't want to pick them up and have them spill. So I usually try to keep the top folded over so it's less likely to give way to gravity and have Trickerion shards all in your box. On top of that, you're going to place the large odds and ends container, if you will, and into the well on top of that box is where your board will go. Note that there are 2 sides to the board, but the only difference on them is the artwork. So there's a day side and a night side on the board, but there's no difference on player count. On Doll Guards Academy, which fits in next, there is a player count side. So there's the 2 to 3 player side and the 4 player side. So you're going to want to make sure you put out the right board for that. And that fits into a slightly less recessed well. The last boards you're going to need are the player boards. There are 4 of them. There's 1 for each trick type. Pay no attention to the color, really. They don't correspond to player colors. They don't need to. But there's 1 board for each trick type. But they are identical, so it doesn't really matter which one you use. And finally, there's the Heirs board, which has the little plume symbol in this side. There is a side for the base game or the base game with the Dark Alley, and there's a side to use with Doll Guards Academy. And then the last things you will put in are all of the rule books. I have the back of the box piece of paper I just saved. There are the Magician's rule books, and I have just tucked into each one the Academy workbook. These are all of the reference materials that each player will need, and if you are using Doll Guards Academy, they will need that other one as well, so I just keep those together. Then we have a Dawn of Technology rulebook, a rulebook for the solo Doll Guards Air, a rulebook for Doll Guards Academy, and the base rulebook. And that fits all into the box very nicely. There's even room for any cheat sheets you might have printed out from Board Game Geek or wherever. And there's still a good 3/8 to 1/2 inch at the top of the box if you want to add additional reference materials. And that is Trickerion, Legends of Illusion. I hope this helped you organize your game, and I hope you enjoy wowing the audiences of Megoria with your illusions.